Hello, and thank you for joining us for this 2021 PromatDX digital session, Best Practices in Warehouse Automation Readiness, How to Excel with Oracle NetSuite, WMS, and Data Capture. We are joined today by Peter Zielinski, Director of Partner Solutions here at Barcoding, and Allison Keener, Principal Solutions Specialist at NetSuite. This presentation is recorded, but the speakers will be answering questions live as you submit them. Welcome and thank you for being our speakers. Peter, I'll start with you first. Can you please introduce yourself?
I can, and thank you, Iris. My name is Peter Zielinski. As you can read, I'm the Director of Partner Solutions at Barcoding Inc., and I've been in the auto ID and data capture industry for over 25 years. That's everything from putting together mobile devices and making sure they work in context, to analyzing and assessing process improvements to help make warehousing, distribution, and even manufacturing a much more connected, efficient, and accurate process. Hey, Allison, you're next.
Thanks, Peter. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Allison Keener. I am a Principal Solutions Specialist here at Oracle NetSuite. That specialty being WMS, of course, all of its accompanying complementary functionality. Been here a little more than 6 years. I've worn many hats along the way, too many to rattle off now, most of which have involved WMS in some way. Been in the supply chain software arena some 16 years, everything from implementing to supporting, selling, managing, enabling, QAing products in the ERP, WMS, private fleet, TMS areas. So look forward to taking the group through our session today.
Thank you, Allison. So I guess the big question is, how do you guys know each other?
Good question. So NetSuite and Barcoding have been partnered now for 4 years plus, collaborating on WMS opportunities, implementations, and WMS challenges. I met Peter specifically on a project implementing WMS version 18.2, so a few years ago. And since then, Peter and Peter's team have really been my go-to when it comes to questions regarding devices and labeling and Wi-Fi or lack thereof. I'd like to think I'm his go-to, or we're his go-to when it comes to WMS questions as well.
It is quite a good collaboration. I mean, it's all about people, processes, and technology, and improving that client experience for both NetSuite WMS implementations and making use of that warehouse readiness to make sure things go smoothly. So that being said, I'm going to set out the challenge for the audience today. Are you ready? If you really are ready for a WMS, I'm going to give you a little montage of what I would expect to find in your warehouse if I'm doing a walkthrough. And just to kind of give you a heads up on this presentation, it's not really about Barcoding, the company, or about Oracle NetSuite WMS. It's really about how you can prepare your warehouse, your people, your processes, and your technology to have the best possible experience when you implement a WMS. NetSuite and Barcoding are just the context for the conversation. What do you need to do to prepare? So let's start that montage. Do you have mobile devices that are ready for your environment and designed for your environment? Are they Android Enterprise recommended? Are they durable? Have they been hardened for that warehouse concrete floor? Are they designed to be held in your hand, brick on a stick style, basically as a scan gun? And do you have wireless in your warehouse to support all of the activity you intend to capture? That being said, all of that activity happens in a context, a physical context within your warehouse. And that context has to be both useful to that scan process, if you're using barcodes to guide your process, as well as to the individuals who work in that environment. So do you have barcode labeling on all of your pallet racking? Does it identify the difference between the levels clearly and concisely? Do you have all of your aisles identified with numbers and names? Do you have area signs hanging up above floor locations to help decide, what's where in your warehouse so that your employees know where to go when they're looking for stuff? And last but not least, does your product have barcodes for all of the important information on that? Not just the SKU, but maybe the lot number, or if you're serialized, that serial number should be barcoded as well, because nobody wants to make that mistake. So this is all about, are you ready? Getting started on that, Allison and I are going to walk you through a typical warehouse digital transformation process and how we work together to set the stage for success. So I want you to pay attention to what you've already planned for and what you may not have yet thought of. So Allison, kind of what are our typical clients like, and how are they different?
Good question. Of course, our clients come in a lot of different flavors. There are those who are existing NetSuite ERP customers, but are currently mostly just shuffling paper in the warehouse. Right? No real warehouse management system in place. There are those who are transitioning from an existing ERP that is not NetSuite and mostly shuffling paper in the warehouse, right? Not using anything formal for WMS. And there are those who are transitioning from an existing ERP and a WMS, right? Where that WMS, of course, could be more or less robust as far as WMSs go. In terms of how they're different, those who are existing NetSuite customers generally are going to be comfortable with the look, the feel, transaction structure, the various tools, searches, reporting that NetSuite has to offer. Those who are coming from a different ERP do have a bit of adjusting to do, right? They're learning NetSuite, they're learning how NetSuite is structured, and then also doing the same with the new WMS. Folks who are paper-based in the warehouse generally have to adjust a bit to the digital transformation process. With it is going to come a bit more rigidity, right? You're scanning items, bins, lots, cereals, instead of just grabbing stuff off the shelf, maybe writing it down on paper. But also, it's going to come with more intelligence, okay? Rather than traversing the warehouse 6 times to find a product or pick the same product for a bunch of different orders, the system knows where everything is. Going to provide recommendations to the operators, make their lives a little bit easier. It's also going to, of course, introduce accuracy, right? Less mispicks means less returns, unhappy customers to deal with because of said mispicks. Finally, folks coming from an existing WMS, especially one that is on-premise, do get to eliminate some of the IT woes that come with those on-premise systems. Of course, while most WMSs have a lot of similarities, these folks may also need to adjust a bit to new standard operating procedures or SOPs, different ways, hopefully more efficient of managing certain operational processes, exceptions, and so on, right? The hope is that you keep the good habits, wipe clean the bad habits. And sometimes a new implementation allows you to really do that.
So that's a pretty good summary of how what WMS would kind of go forward based upon a customer type. I mean, some customers have absolutely no WMS experience whatsoever other than pushing paper around, and others are coming from an existing system. And for NetSuite WMS, it's integrated in the ERP system, so they're either transitioning to a WMS that supports their current ERP system or one that's embedded. So just kind of feeding back into this, a few more details about what NetSuite WMS is.
Sure. As I suspect the audience is well aware, Oracle's NetSuite ERP is a software as a service. But right, what is WMS? WMS is really an extension to NetSuite ERP. Okay, at the most basic level, it's going to introduce mobile devices to your warehouses, your DCs, your retail facilities. This is going to allow for that scan validation of transactions, your purchase orders, your transfer orders, your RMAs, sales orders, work orders, items, lots, cereals, bins. It's going to help accelerate warehouse and ERP operations with process automation, real-time inventory availability, and real-time transaction updates. In addition to that, WMS is going to make systemic some of that tribal knowledge we see oh so often in the warehouse. For instance, with put-away strategy configuration, NetSuite WMS is going to recommend to operators where an item should go based on item and inventory attributes, storage requirements, item mixing requirements, and so on. Your operators are not necessarily just left to utilize that tribal knowledge to make those decisions. Right now, can they accept against those? Absolutely. Right, but we're going to track that stuff with the mobile devices, with the real-time communication, back into NetSuite. As Peter kind of already alluded to, very, very important to note that NetSuite WMS is built out of NetSuite. Okay, it did not come about via an acquisition. It's not an integration. It's not subject to some of that syncing that you see with integrated products. Okay, it's all one NetSuite when it comes to WMS and to ERP and all of the associated components and elements.
So that is kind of one of the benefits to the NetSuite WMS. It's part of the ERP. It's not a separate beast. And one of the things I like about NetSuite and the whole implementation process that we've experienced together is that it applies best practices to the warehouse processes, and it makes a lot of that tribal knowledge visible to the end user. That cuts down on training time by a long shot when you're trying to bring a new employee on board, because they don't have to have the tribal knowledge, it's being presented to them. So this whole WMS software concept really brings a lot of operational control as well as visibility, which has benefits across the whole organization. Now, there's another side to this, because in order to support all of this stuff, you have to have the right infrastructure. And that's where
Absolutely.
we're talking about that whole warehouse readiness thing, right?
Absolutely. I'm gonna flip the script on you, Peter. Let's talk a little bit about warehouse readiness and how Barcoding Inc. is able to help accommodate that and get folks ready to actually implement WMS.
Now, half of my work is done already, courtesy of the montage we showed earlier, because I showed you the pieces that really need to be in place to set that stage for success. And what we're talking about is putting the right technology so that your people and your process can be efficient, accurate, and connected, right? So that involves enabling the warehouse infrastructure to support the solution through pervasive Wi-Fi. Now the question is, oh, we've got Wi-Fi in our warehouse. I always come back with the question of, oh, really? Have you tested it in every single location in the warehouse to make sure you have complete coverage? Have you tested it at speed? There's a difference between standing on the floor using a laptop and moving through that warehouse on a fork truck. Do you lose connectivity, or is your Wi-Fi truly pervasive? And if we're talking about getting devices into the warehouse, today we're talking about Android mobile devices. There pretty much is no other platform available. The old CE devices have basically gone away as of 2020. You might still find them floating around, but they're no longer supported. Android's the way to go. And that gives us a huge amount of flexibility in how we can deliver the solution, because you can get an Android tablet, you can get an Android phone style, PDA style, you can get an Android brick on a stick, or trigger scan gun like we showed in the earlier slides. There's all different ways to kind of deploy that hardware that best meets your solution. And we're experts at that. We know how to apply that technology in a place that makes it useful and cost effective. We got to get that ROI involved. And we got to talk about decoration, okay? Your warehouse is a place that employees work in. You're creating an environment there that makes it easy for them to work. If you have barcoded signs and labels, if you have complete signage throughout your warehouse identifying where things are appropriate to be. And you also have to have those product barcode labels. If you don't have labels on all of your products as they come in the door, that has to be a part of that receiving process to get tags on that product, or at least on the location where that product is stored, so that you can identify it easily during the pick process, during the move or transfer process, so that your WMS system can be accurate, efficient, and connected.
All right, so you talked about, let me see if I got it all. You talked about the Wi-Fi, you talked about the devices, the signage, right, in the warehouse, your bin labels and other signage. You talked about, the item, the container barcodes. How does this all work together, right? How does it typically happen?
Well, it's not really a cart before the horse kind of implementation. I mean, it's really a team of two horses working together to pull your cart. You have to have the environment ready so that you can implement that WMS and make use of it as time goes on. And I find that the warehouse readiness thing prepares your employees mentally for the change. So you want to get your warehouse labeling in place long before you actually start training anybody up on the WMS. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening in the sandbox environment as the staff and the people who are doing the development of this and putting it all together are testing things. but the average employee who's still walking around with paper should have some fundamental observation that, hey, things are going to change and they're going to get better. We've got brand new clean labeling up on all of our racking. We've got, hey, there's the product labels have barcodes on them coming from our new vendors. And starting to see some of that change in their environment to help prepare them for that change of workflow when the WMS actually gets initiated. So that warehouse readiness and the software are a parallel implementation process, because we want to coordinate it for project management. You need one to start using the other. So you need a WMS kind of figured out before you can put labeling on your racks, because you have to have locations identified. But before you start putting stuff away, you need to have those locations identified with a barcode label so you can do it easily. Anyhow, the whole idea is the best practices for this implementation are kind of baked into the plan. Everything happens in a coordinated way so that you're not paying for hardware that's sitting in boxes waiting for the next step and losing track of things. Things get staged so that you're making those purchases at an appropriate time to help move the process through. So Allison, you guys have a really good process for NetSuite WMS implementations, and you guys call it Suite Success. Could you kind of describe what that approach is?
Absolutely. So Suite Success is really an implementation methodology that NetSuite uses for most of its products. WMS is quote unquote Suite Successified. There's really three main elements I like to cite when talking Suite Success. The first is leading practices, right? You've heard Peter kind of talk about best practices. Based on our industry specific experience, implementing not just WMS, but NetSuite WMS, we've developed a set of leading practices for each operational area. As part of the sales process, we're going to align customers' business processes, requirements with those leading practices. The closer that alignment and or more willing the customer is to use those leading practices, the more standard and efficient generally will be the implementation, and likely the quicker ROI you're going to see. Suite Success also supplies a set of prepackaged roles, searches, reports, KPIs, dashboards. So you're not starting from ground zero. The idea here is that right out of the box, you're at 60, 70% of the way there with some of those pieces as part of the implementation. And then as part of the implementation, your implementation team will help fine-tune these things and, of course, teach to fish, right? Allowing you to get the rest of the way on your own. And then finally, as you see on the screen here, Suite Success introduces a standard sort of implementation approach of engage, drive, enable, convert. In short, these four stages of implementation are going to cover the preparation, the configuration and personalization of your WMS, training, testing, migrating, go live, with, of course, post-implementation, the opportunity for continued optimization.
So if you're going into implementing a WMS, what advice would you give to your clients?
How much time do we have, Peter?
What's the shortest one? What's the shortest one you got?
Really just a few things, right? To start, remember, IT can do anything if they don't have to do everything. As it pertains to warehouse readiness, things like the Wi-Fi, the decor, the devices, these can be deployed efficiently and optimally by partners to support IT as well as to support the implementation teams, right? Implementation team is not having to get pulled aside to help figure out what's going on with a particular mobile device, right? Barcoding can take that stuff on. As I alluded to earlier, the closer you keep to those leading practices, the cleaner the configuration, the testing, the training will be. Try to avoid customizing the solution to keep old habits in place, right? While the solution may not cover every use case, sometimes customization is inevitable when unique requirements are introduced. But I can't count how many times I've had to convince a customer that we're going down the path of a customization, right? Which means time and money to accommodate existing SOPs, habits that really don't align with leading practice operations. Remember, the application is designed and the leading practices are documented for a reason. All right, wherever possible, change your processes, your operations to match those.
So we are really talking at this point about the best practices to apply for pretty much any WMS, right? So if you want to be successful in this transformation, you want to invest as much effort in transforming your people as you are in transforming your technologies and your processes. Part of that is, some of the existing SOPs aren't built around a WMS. They're built around that paper process. Don't try to incorporate all the things that you used to do into how you're going to do them forward. Take this as a time to do things differently. Hopefully better, because we're using a best practice or a leading practice approach to things, right? Don't skimp on training time. Don't skimp on your testing time. Think about it this way. Your customers depend upon you to get your orders out the door faster, not slower, after you implement your system. And the only way that's possible is if you practice, right?
Absolutely. So when does the warehouse readiness really start? At what stage in the sales or the project cycle?
Oh, I would say the earlier the better. In some cases, we're brought into greenfield scenarios where they don't have anything in place. They're literally they're expanding their warehouse operation and they've got to put everything into place. The racking, the labeling on the racking. And that's where we kind of say, okay, let's get involved and help you accelerate that process so that you can get product on those shelves and be able to find it. Again, kind of the earlier the better. So if you're starting to talk about a new WMS, invite us in to take a look at your scenario and see what's going on in your warehouse now and what you might need to get prepared for. The physical space needs to be ready and the infrastructure needs to be able to support that WMS. And warehouse readiness sets that stage for success.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What do you mean by setting the stage?
Well, I don't. You've been to Broadway shows or you've been to street shows where they're actually getting the audience prepared for what's going to happen on stage. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Signage is probably the most important thing to put in place, whether it's labeling for your rack locations or your floor locations, or literally just putting up signs that identify clearly this is aisle A, this is aisle B, this is aisle C, so that you can get ready for that implementation. And then again, diving deeper into your process, do you have the tools available to execute a WMS? Do you have label printers in case you have to print things on demand? Do you have those barcode scanners? And those barcode scanners, they need Wi-Fi. Do you have that pervasive Wi-Fi? So we're getting all of this kind of stuff in place, but we're also changing the environment to prepare your employees for change. This is a huge and often overlooked factor in change management. Those warehouse labels, they don't just have to be white labels with a black barcode on there. We can bring in your colors, the colors of your brand, using your labels so that this is customized for your environment. And there's really no additional cost because we've got to print those things anyway. Whether we print them in color or black and white isn't going to change the cost a whole lot because it's your information. Present it in the best way possible to set yourself up for success. This better signage, better labels brings about a better attitude that things are changing or improving.
Got it. So I've got my signage, I've got my labels, I've evaluated my Wi-Fi. Seems pretty good. What else? What else do I need to do to make sure that come time for go live, I'm ready to go?
So in the sales cycle, one of the things we always do is we put forth a quote for here's how much your devices are going to cost and how we can get them set up to be delivered on time and when you need them. And what isn't often taken into context is, yeah, we need 50 devices. You don't need all 50 devices right away. You need 2 or 3 right off the bat so that you can start testing the system and using it. But you're not going to need all 50 devices. So upfront, get some devices in hand, configured, paid for that you own. Get at least one starter kit of all the equipment that you need so that you can demo and test and pilot the system. You can't successfully simulate yourself through a user acceptance test. I mean, NetSuite WMS and a lot of the WMSs now are browser-based. So you could literally bring a laptop in there and walk through your transactions. But that's not the same experience that you're creating for your employees. They're going to be using mobile devices. So get those mobile devices in hand so that you can start walking through the process as it's going to happen. You're going to uncover a lot of things that you wouldn't otherwise see because you're actually using the devices you will be using when you go live. And by all means, get your warehouse decorated and get the equipment on order as soon as possible so that delivery can be timed to coincide with the various steps of your user acceptance testing, of your sandboxing, of whatever that workflow might be. Transform the environment so that you can practice and prepare for that warehouse management digital transformation.
Gotcha. So you asked me the question as it pertains to WMS implementation. Peter, any advice on warehouse readiness?
Okay, like you said earlier, IT can do anything if IT doesn't have to do everything. Lean on us, lean on your solutions providers. Warehouse readiness can be deployed efficiently by partners to support your IT. And often making do is often the same thing as accepting failure. And above all, train and train again. The Navy SEALs have a saying, you do not rise to the occasion, you sink to the level of your training. If you're lightly trained, you have lots of fail. Longer implementation cycles, lower ROI, and it takes longer to achieve that ROI in the end. You really want to make sure you're spending enough time training and preparing your people to use the system as you are developing and implementing the system. But that's just my experience.
Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about what barcoding, does differently than other technology providers. I know from my experience, NetSuite and barcoding have really partnered with one another for a reason. We've got a proven process for success, a solid understanding of what software, hardware, services each provides. We work well together, and we've developed a trust. I know for me, and I can probably speak for most of my colleagues, anytime a customer goes it on their own with warehouse readiness decisions, hardware, Wi-Fi, signage, and they've struggled, which it certainly happens, it's always the first phone call we make. It's barcoding team to the rescue. Peter, I don't know if you kind of want to add to that in terms of what really makes barcoding a differentiator in the technology provider arena.
Well, we offer the opportunity to get a turnkey platform for a WMS in terms of the hardware, the warehouse decor. We know how to make that successful for you. We gather your requirements during our pre-live sessions down to the device settings that are needed to ensure that your WMS implementation will be a success. And we pre-configure that hardware and deliver it and kit it, make it ready for your operations. And we've got technical support and our barcoding online services to make sure that your investment is maintained and to help you, troubleshoot when things go weird. We also have account management to stay connected to your needs and enable you to scale those operations during the rest of that rollout and as your business grows. So we kind of work together with the WMS providers like NetSuite to make sure that the customer has an ongoing team for success, supporting the rollout as well as supporting their ongoing activities. And we try to make it easy. We want to be the easy button for you. So I think that's about all we could say. And we're pretty much coming up on time, so we should probably bring this to a close.
Sure. Yeah, so we've covered a lot here, folks. There's certainly been some recurring themes and some messages. Just to kind of summarize here, right? In closing, NetSuite's Suite Success methodology really applies a thorough but efficient approach of best practices for properly scoping and implementing NetSuite WMS for customers coming from a variety of different places. Warehouse readiness is really going to set the stage for a successful implementation. Use Barcoding Inc. to ensure that the infrastructure for your Wi-Fi is in place. Help get the warehouse environment set up properly. Prepare employees for a change to their processes, new ways of thinking. Identify the proper mobile devices, and train. Can't stress that enough. Key here is to lean on your solutions partners for help. Remember, can't state this enough, IT can do anything if it doesn't have to do everything.
And with that, I would like to say thank you from Barcoding and NetSuite, together ensuring that your people, processes, and technology are efficient, accurate, and connected. If you've got any questions, please ask them in the chat. We've been responding in real time, but just a last-minute reminder, if you get further questions, we'll gladly respond to those. Thank you, everyone.